Hello, it's Mike Batt here, and I'm just trying out this whole idea of having a YouTube channel. Well, I've had a YouTube channel for a long time, but just put the odd little tiny bit on it. My company Dramatico has had a YouTube channel for many years and lots of associated artists, and this is my own little sort of decision to just open it up and have a chat occasionally and I don't know, talk about anything that comes into my mind, usually associated with what I do, which is obviously writing and composing, arranging, even conducting, if there's anything we need to talk about on that subject. Whatever, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about today, but I had a feeling I might aim it at professionals or people who are interested in just in the craft of my particular art and craft, science, whatever you call it. It's all of those things. And I thought I might have a chat about string arranging, actually, to start with, because I mean, you'll see there's an array of stuff. And this room, by the way, that I'm in is my normal little writing room. It is a writing room. I call it a writing room, but I've actually made records to release in here, finished records, because of the wonders of Logic and Logic and Pro Tools, which are, of course, the two tools that most people use these days for programming and writing. As anyone who's a pro watching will know, they're called a DAW, D-A-W, and it means, basically one of these things, which is driven by a computer. My computer's down here, my big beast, my Mac Pro, which is loaded up with tons of memory, and it's quite high spec, but it needs to be for the level of work that we're doing. I say we're doing, it's during lockdown, it's just been me, because I haven't been able to have an engineer or anything, so I've had to really, swat up on my knowledge and ability to use Logic, which I personally use as my main armament these days. It used to be, in the old days, a bit of paper. That's what you used. You just had a bit of paper, and, well, it wasn't just a bit of paper, it was a manuscript paper, 24 stave, quite small staves, so bigger than a sort of standard school size you get, so twice as high. And it's enough to write for a full symphony orchestra, as long as you put two flutes on one stave, two oboes on another stave, that kind of thing. I mean, if you put everything on a separate stave, you'd need it that big, bigger than this picture. Anyway, I used to just use a bit of paper and a ruler and a pencil and a piano, and I always used to just sit at the piano. I didn't have any special sounds that coming off the keyboard. I just had a piano, and I got used to thinking in my imagination let's say I put four horns into an arrangement. I kind of developed the ability to, as one would, you can imagine, to imagine what four horns sound like when you play a particular chord. I don't know if my keyboard's even on. No, it's not. But I still prefer to arrange that these days, even though these beasts over here can provide me with a full Berlin orchestra horn section if I want to. And when I'm recording, I sometimes do that. But when I'm arranging and writing, I prefer to hear it on a keyboard sound coming out of this, even if I get you can't really see the size of it here, but there is a score out there. It's something I'm working on. It's a full symphonic score. It will play itself back to me, which is fantastic, because in the old days you just couldn't do that. You wrote it down, and I was a perfectionist, but I was never perfect. So I would find I'd get to the studio and there'd be the odd mistake, of course, either me, probably more likely me, or my copyist, the guy that would copy out from my score to the individual part, let's say individual trumpet part, what I'd written on a big score. that guy, he could make mistakes as well. So between the two of us, there were always going to be a few mistakes in the studio. But since all this stuff came along, I got my first Finale, which is the scoring software. I got the first one in 1989, which was about the first time it came over from America. And it was the first one I thought was good enough for you to do slurs and staccatos and accents, you know, with enough facility and ability to get it as good as you could with a pencil. And everyone who went on to software, whether it was recently because they're younger than me or whatever, or in 1989 when I first started, and the first thing I started on was the Dreamstone. It was a big symphonic score for a TV series, 52 episodes. And I decided to learn Finale, which is this scoring software you can see behind me, learn how to write using a computer, which any what you might call composer who thought themselves as an arranger in a traditional way, who writes every piccolo note out and every cello staccato dot or everything, we were all like, really, are we going to be able to get that through a computer? Is that going to happen? Is that a thing, as we say these days? And it is a thing, and I decided that I would learn it with a job and a deadline, because I knew that if I started and just did it here and there, it would take me forever. And if I had to deliver it in time for a session, if you got the LSO waiting, and I think it was the RPO actually, Royal Philharmonic. No, it was the London Philharmonic. I beg their pardon, everyone's pardon. If I'm sure they don't care, but anyway, there you go. And Abbey Road and all that. So it's a big job. And I had to get it delivered in time. So I made it my business to teach myself, as it were, on the job, forgive the expression, while and what you do when you're, I know I'm rambling, but you know, that's the way these talks are going to go. What you do is, this is a MIDI keyboard. I particularly like this one, and I've had it forever. I've got 2 or 3 of them. CP300, Yamaha CP300. And it's a really good workhorse, as I call it. And you input the notes through MIDI. So I have one hand on, it's not this one, but because I'm using the other screen, but I would have one hand on here, and if I press the number 5, that's a crotchet. I press the number 6, that's a minim, and the number 4 is a quaver, and so on. And so you've got one hand on here for the value of the note, and the other hand on here for the actual note. So let's say I want a G and a crotchet. I'd play a G and then a 5 on the keyboard, and that's what it would input the note onto here. And that to be doing that when really you're so used to just going dot 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 and writing them in so quickly, sometimes overnight for a full symphony orchestra for 3 hours, not 3 hours, 3 minutes worth of music, or maybe 2 nights. You know, but anyway, that you have a pride in that, and it makes you think, well, I'm a proper craftsman, and like an old wood carver, you think, you know, I'm just gonna keep doing that. But when you realize that actually it might be slower to start with because you just don't know it quite so well, forgive me, I'm not looking into the camera all the time, and it might be slower to start with, but once you get to know it, things like, I don't know, first of all, it looks great because it's all printed out like proper music, like, you know, it looks like Mozart or something. Well, not like he wrote, because he wrote with a pen, but on pencil, I don't know what he wrote with him. Well, I'm sure that in those days they only had ink, didn't they? They didn't have pencils even. So they just scratched, that's why they all got scratching out and everything. And so I used to work with a pencil and a rubber, so you know, and I really loved working that way, but I did find that once I'd started working on Finale, which you can see behind me, I would, and the Sibelius is another one, which is the one that has almost become industry standard. I think it's about even. I think the received wisdom is that I don't do Sibelius. because I'd already learnt finale, and I'm not a copyist, and I don't need to know all of the different. There are so many clever people around who do know them all, because they work for me. If they do finale, if they work for someone else that works on Sibelius, it was almost identical but completely different software. They have to know that. So the copyists are the ones that have got the real sort of computer brains, and they know how to use all of the different programs. But I particularly have always worked with Finale. Anyway, I found that, for example, let's say I might be writing a piece for a film, and I'm using a theme that I've worked out, and the director's said it's okay, or maybe it's for a solo album I'm doing, or something else. It could have been anything. And I say could have been, I still do it. So you might write a theme. Let's say you've written a piece of, in your string section you have first violins. By the way, I'm treating everyone as a beginner here, and I know there's loads of people here who are going, yeah, I know that. First violin, second violin, viola, cello, and basses. And let's say that within a piece of string writing for a particular scene or a song, let's say a chorus of a song, because that's an easier one to imagine. And the viola line, particularly, you put it in there as a harmony, but you want to make it interesting, so it might be a counterpoint. A counterpoint, for those who don't know, is a moving melody that fits with another moving melody. And I love writing that kind of string stuff, because it means that your first violins and your second violins, you don't really want them to be accidentally clashing, playing the same note. Why would they need to? You know, you might have one go over the other, and it's a bit like doing a jigsaw puzzle. But if you can make it so the melodies work in and around each other, then you're writing sort of contrapuntal harmony, really. Nobody ever taught me this at school. It's just stuff you learn if you're passionate enough about it and you want to get into that stuff. So I'm sort of talking to people that know a little bit about string arranging or want to. Anyway, so let's say you do get, I'm relating it to the symphonic, what am I talking about? The software of whether it's good to be writing it by hand, or, I mean, some people don't write by hand anyway, but they rely on the technology to write it out for them, and that's absolutely fine. It's the ideas that matter. Doesn't matter how you get them out onto paper. I mean, Paul McCartney doesn't read or write music. Jeff Lynne doesn't. I remember I used to do his top lines back when we were both about 18, and he might have been about 20. I think he might be a bit older than me, tiny bit. Anyway, we were assigned to the same, see, I told you I'd go off at tangents. We were assigned to the same publishing company, and he would send his stuff in on tapes, and the publisher would say to me, Mike, would you just write this out? So I'd write out a clean copy of how anyone would read it and play it on the piano. I put the lyrics underneath it. I took great pride in being very neat. And I did them 2 for £1. That's how much it was in those days. But it was a long time ago. So it was a reasonable amount of money, actually, to keep me alive. That's how I made my living. It was by transcribing other people's songs onto, a top line, as we called it in those days, so the publisher could lodge it for copyright purposes and everything else. If a producer wanted to hear a song, they would send a demo on an acetate, which was like a cut with a lathe, a little record of it. And they would also send my top line with it, so that, the producer probably couldn't even read music anyway, but if he could, then they would be able to give it to their arranger to make the record. Anyway, so I digress slightly, because I'm talking about the art of writing down music, which is, I do urge anyone who's in the music industry, whether you're a bass player, doesn't matter, your heroes, maybe like Paul and Jeff, they might not write music, but hey, I've got to tell you, it does help. I know a lot of those guys say, oh no, it would be much better not to write, because then you're relying on your head, and there's all sorts of philosophies that clash and all resonate with each other. And yeah, everybody's right, but I do think that learning, if you can put as much time into learning how to write music down, then you'll find that you're opening up a whole sort of magic garden of things you can do that you wouldn't have otherwise been able to do. So anyway, meanwhile, back at these things. By the way, this other screen here, that's an iMac. And it's not, I haven't got that up to the same, operating system as this beast, which is my Pro. And the screen for my Mac Pro is the one you see, which has got the score on behind me, the wide screen. That's a 49-inch curved screen. Really good for scoring, because you can see quite a lot of the music. I always joke that it means you can write longer pieces of music, but of course that's daft. Not that being daft is, not that I'm being rude to any daft people out there. Don't want to offend anyone these days, do we? Anyway, so yeah, where was I? Oh yeah, about the string writing. So you've got let's say you're writing a piece for strings, or an overlay for an orchestra onto a pop record, whatever it might be, and you've come across something about the viola line you've written, i.e. not the first violins, not the second violins, the viola is the third one down in terms of height, altitude, whatever you call it, and the cello goes below that and the bass goes below that. And I do actually, I'll throw in a little tip here. If you're writing for string quartet and it's in a studio or concert, make it a quintet. Have a bass. It's fabulous to have a bass, because you can, that frees up your cello to do all sorts of beautiful things while your bass is down there keeping that nice brown. Somebody once actually asked me for a brown sound in a commercial. That's amazing what directors tell you sometimes. But anyway, or they can be doing a pizzicato to keep it going. Boom, 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 like a jazz bass, and your cello's maybe doubling the viola to do something else, and particularly if it's a section. Anyway, I told you I'd be going everywhere with this, and it's my first try at, if anyone's just tuned in, how do you just tune into YouTube? You choose, don't you, to switch it on or not. I see I've done 17 minutes already, so I won't keep you too long now. I'll make this a shorter one than I might otherwise have done. But I'm just checking it out for myself. I don't even know if it's going to look all right. I might think, ooh, I've got a pimple. I better not put that one out. I haven't actually got a pimple that I can think of. But hey, I think perhaps we're a bit beyond pimples these days. If I was 18, it might matter. So that at the moment, I'm not using that at the moment because that is not upgradable to the software I'm using on the big beast of my Mac Pro, which can just do anything. I mean, it's fantastic what it can do. Sorry, I'm not looking straight into the camera. So, meanwhile, back at my viola tune, what the technology of Finale or Sibelius or any of the programs like that are scoring packages, what it will do is you think, that's a great little tune there. I'll choose it with my mouse and I'll move it to bar 36 from bar 23, and I'll put it in the clarinets. And so you drag it up the score just with a mouse, there's your mouse, just in case anyone doesn't know what a mouse is. Of course you do, I'm just kidding. And you just drag it up. Well, actually, I could try and show you how a score works. I'm a bit worried about moving the camera around, but you can see here that you've got your different instruments at different heights. So these are actually horns, French horns, and this is the strings down here. First violin, second violin is, oh no, that's a guitar. That's a guitar. Anyway, so if you've got, yeah, I've probably buggered up the whole thing now. Shouldn't have moved. There you go. back again now. Let's see how that goes. If you've got your a tune you like, you don't have to write it out again. In the old days, if in a hurry, 3 o'clock in the morning, and you've got a session at 10, and you're still trying to finish it, I wouldn't even bother to write it out by the pencil. What I would have done was just write the word, write to the copyist, put my pencil down the whole bar of the whole score, and put a ring, and put the number 23, if it was bar 23 I wanted to copy, which indicated the copyist that at bar 36 you wanted him to do the same as bar 23. So they're called reference bars. And it sometimes you're working so quickly that you wanted, let's say that viola tune, you wanted it on the clarinet at, I don't know how many bars, 13 bars later, whatever, and you would literally just be writing 23, 24, 25, i.e., please, Mr. Copyist or Miss Copyist, would you please, or Mrs. Copyist, would you please copy what I wrote earlier, because I haven't got time now, because the session's at not, in 2 hours time, and I haven't got time to write it out. These days, you just get your mouse, whatever you use, and drag it, put it in, or reference it somehow with the keyboard. You don't have to drag it, and it puts that into your clarinets. But let's say you don't want it in the clarinets, you want it, and it's you only wrote it. This is the reason I think it's better for a composer to arrange their own and orchestrate their own work. And I know there's friends of mine who are absolutely fabulous composers, famous composers, people who do wonderful work, who might not agree with me on this, or might not just get the point. But I often use the viola as an idea. I never used to use violas when I first started out. I couldn't afford them. Just thought, well, the violins go down as far as the violas go up, and the cellos go beyond that range as well. So why do you need any violas? But in fact, the day I discovered violas was like a chef discovering a particular ingredient, but much more. Well, that's not fair to violas really, but calling them an ingredient. But there's a beautiful sound of its own. It's not like a low violin. It's not like a high cello. So anyway, again, I told you I'd digress, and sure enough, I have. I'm going to stop in a minute because it's already 22 minutes and 44 seconds into the recording. Anyway, so that all I'm telling you about is the thing about the technology of writing into software. I mean, there was a false impression always that when computers that had orchestration ability were invented, people would say, oh, so you get a computer to orchestrate it for you, do you? But that would be just like saying to an author, so your word processor writes the novel for you, does it? And of course it doesn't. It's like a notepad that you write everything down on. But the beauty of it is, of course, it plays it all back for you. And going back to my point that I didn't finish earlier, this is getting a bit like a Billy Connolly routine. You go back to the point I didn't finish earlier, which was that if you make mistakes in the pencil work, and the guy who writes it out from that for each instrument, he makes a mistake, you're wasting about 10 minutes talking to a trumpet player who's like 50 feet away from you at the back of the orchestra while everybody's mumbling and talking. And that's 10 minutes worth of, it probably is, well, anyway, it wastes a lot of time in the studio, let's put it that way. It's very expensive. If you've got it written out and you've heard it through, just on the piano, I don't use any sounds from, I hate listening to an orchestration that I've done back on sounds like samples, because they're pretty good these days, but it takes so long to program them, and there are special people who can do that really well. I'm learning to do it for just jobs where people can't afford an orchestra. If somebody says to me, oh, do you mind just doing me a little bit of music for something? I haven't got a budget for an orchestra. Well, these days you sometimes have to use samples, and samples can sometimes add beautifully, and they're also good for doing demos in fact, they're essential for doing demos for directors, for films. So I understand they're part of the raison d'etre of samples, but when I'm writing, I like to use a piano sound only. So I play on the piano and it gets printed out. And what I've played on the piano, well, I mean, I've already written it in, as I said, with my keyboard telling me whether it's going to be semi, hemi, demi, semi-quavers, triplets that can do perfectly happily these days. You know, until 1989, when I sort of went, okay, now the technology is good enough. They couldn't do things like triplets. You'd have to work out a way of doing it. Anyway, so I've rambled on long enough. I just wanted to have a little chat. It's probably bored I mean, you probably switched off by now. So if you have, anyway, if what I'm saying is that if you had switched off, you wouldn't have seen me do that. So everything's all right, isn't it? So this is me signing off because I've probably well, maybe I haven't bored the crap out of everybody, but I'm going to post this, warts and all, even with the funny wobble of the camera right in the middle, and let's just see, you know, right. Oh, I know what you should do in these YouTube things, and I should have said it at the front, is that I think they're going to put a subscribe button. So you have to hit the subscribe button, don't you? And then you have to hit the bell to say you liked it, and put a comment underneath. Because if you liked it, I'd like to know. And if you didn't like it, I want to know that as well, because I want to know why. Don't just say, I hated it, fuck off. You know, put like, yeah, but you didn't go into this or that, and could you please next time? So this is me. I didn't even know I was going to talk about string writing, and I hardly talked about string writing. I talked about technology and the life of an arranger. So it's turned out like nearly a half. It's more than a TV half hour. This, hey, wow, what great value for nothing, unless you hated it, in which case it was a very expensive waste of your time. Okay, it's Mike Batt here, and I'm signing off, and my YouTube channel is born. Whoa, goodbye, see you soon.